Me and DJ Villain have managed to corner two members of the Project Zomboid team. Now, guys, can you just quickly introduce yourselves, tell me what you do and why you're doing it?
Okay, my name's Chris Simpson, or Lemmy. I'm the programmer on Project Zomboid, co-designer with the rest of the team, and yes, and I do what I do because I do it.
Tricky question, that one. Right, let's move on, shall we? And yourself?
I'm Andy Hodgetts Binky, and I do graphics, animation, and also co-design stuff. And yeah, we do it because we are fans of zombie films.
All right, great answer.
That was a better answer.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only answer that we can accept for that anyway. So today you're showing off Project Zomboid. Tell us a bit about the game for those that don't know.
Well, it's obviously a zombie survival game. It's more focused on actual survival. So you sort of you've got the town that you start in, and you've got to go about breaking into houses and looting the fridges and the cupboards, trying to find food, trying to find these things to use as weapons, be them frying pans or golf clubs or anything you can find about. Then you're barricading up, you can build stuff, you can farm. We're going to eventually have hunting in. We've got a big NPC update, so you basically have an NPC group, and you've got to find chefs to cook so you can keep morale up, and
it's basically trying to do the complete zombie survival experience.
So you're going for a more authentic style gameplay then?
Yeah, I guess the basic gist of it is survive by any means necessary.
yeah.
That's cool.
Another important thing is it says when you load the game, this is how you died. It's basically the story of how you died. So there's no chance of winning the game. There's no cure. There's no.
Yeah, help won't be on its way. Things will only get worse from this point out.
At some point you'll die, and that's an important thing for us because we want the story to be what happens before you die, not something. It's like when you're playing, say, Skyrim or something. You've got like the main quest, and then you've got side quests, and it's like I'll do a bit of the main quest, and now I'll do some side quests. Where we just want people to focus on making their own story based on what happens to them. It's like emergent stories out of the game.
So it's safe to say that the player's experience will also differ depending on obviously what choices they make throughout the gameplay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean there's no right way to play it. It's just, I mean, if the story of how you died was you spend 4 days locked in a room and then starve to death, then that's a legitimate story.
I think that's probably my story, to be honest. I usually get too afraid to run out into anywhere on these games. So tell me about the build that you've brought here today. I mean, I know the game's been out recently. There's a new build, so I saw it on your Twitter feed. What new features can people hope to see from this new build?
Well, if we're talking about, I mean, the new build that's recently been released on Zura was the big update because that was a new map, split screen support. We haven't got online yet, but we've got local co-op.
And is that a future plan then?
Yes,
this is kind of like the split screen stuff is kind of step one towards the goal of full online multiplayer, but it's kind of we go in middle stages. So like the last standard mode that's in there at the moment is kind of a quick game version. One building, hordes of zombies attacking it, and that's kind of like a test bed for as we expand and eventually go into multiplayer. We'll be testing it out on that little map and then migrating that to the full survival game itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so the game's obviously a massive sandbox. Tell me about how, what can you hope to find out there in the world to help you survive, and what's the best item you know of so far in the game for helpful survivors to try and stave off the zombie hordes for a little while longer?
I think a fire axe is the best.
The axe.
Good old brute force fire axe then, yeah?
So you can chop down doors with it.
Chop down trees.
You can chop down trees, so you can get wood for barricades or for building. And obviously it's pretty good at dispatching zombies, but we're currently rebalancing it to try and make it so that all weapons have a use, so you don't just find the fire axe and go, right, that's it for the game.
We had a problem with before that very, very close combat weapons like knives and things were pretty useless. So we've done an overhaul on the way the combat works for them to give them more use as a very close combat weapon. So the knives, because basically the idea is that you start the game, you're in some random building, and anything will do as a weapon, and it needs to be usable. Obviously, there are better weapons out there, but grab a pan or a spoon or anything.
Pencil. I've seen a pencil going around.
Pencil. Well, yeah. In the old version, 1.5, people were using pencils quite a lot.
Yeah, so they were like instant kill, but then the break.
So I recently came back to the game after playing it when it was in its very early stages. It had a very blobby, cartoonish feel is what I would describe it as. And there's a whole new different art style to it now. I mean, it's still in the same vein, the same colour scheme and everything, but everything seems a bit more defined and a bit more realistic in sense. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, the original art style was, if we'd have had a team of like 1,000 people, we would have probably gone with a hand pixel look. But it was kind of impractical because of the scope and size of the game that we want to do. It was a bit impractical to do, when you've got a whole bunch of different costumes and, weapons and all these things have to be drawn, all the frames have to be done. So like the run cycle.
It's like 8 directions as well.
Yeah.
8 directions, and the run cycle in that old version was like 4 frames. It didn't look very good. In the ideal world, it would have had like 6, 8, 12 frames or something. So this way, we're now using models and rendering those to sprites, but we're going through our own tool set for that to try and. We didn't want it just to look like little models.
Yeah.
So we wanted to try and capture some of the original style of the art. So we've kind of processed all those frames ourselves and try to keep it fairly true to the original game. I
mean, it was born out of necessity, but I would be lying if I say I didn't much prefer it this way.
It's given us so much more flexibility. We've got much smoother animations. We've got more animations. We've got much more customization of the characters, and that's only going to increase.
And not only that, but I mean, one thing that people have really sort of attached themselves to with this game is the realism of it, and perhaps the more cartoony style doesn't really gel with the realistic zombie experience we're going for. So
and also because of the nature of the development, we improve and update bits in sort of like. Not consistently. You work on one thing, then you work on another thing. And one big change that was made earlier was when Chris did an overhaul over the lighting and made the lighting smoother, much nicer, much more atmospheric. And when we did that, and we looked at that in combination with the old pixel art, the two things just did not match in the slightest. You had this really nice smooth lighting and these kind of really low frame rate pixely characters.
We've got that problem with the fire now. It's because the fire's still the old fire, and it doesn't really go now. So it's like you start to think you have to replace things to bring them in line to make it a bit more.
So that's it. So as you change one thing, you then reevaluate everything and you think, that could do a change. And that's the thing about alpha-funded games. It gives you the flexibility to kind of just adapt and make changes and as you go. And because now we're using models and more traditional animation tools, it gives us a flexibility, like with the knife, to go. That really needs an animation, and then we can, and then a week later that's all in. Whereas if we were doing it all by hand, you'd never get anything like that. You wouldn't have the speed to be able to.
It might come out in the next decade then if you did it that way.
Well, one thing is the whole staking stuff, which just wouldn't have been able to exist with the old sprite system because it would just been too much work. And like it's butting up against walls and ducking down. That's not in yet, but it's a planned feature, like crawling behind fences and stuff like that. And
more flexibility with the zombies themselves, like crawling on the floor. And
Yeah, I noticed. I didn't see them in the original time I played it, but there's crawlers now with they'll crawl along against the floor to try and get you.
They're not fully implemented yet.
We implemented them. There was a problem with them turning, because the way they turn, they would instantly snap in directions that looked a bit weird.
But again, it's had we had the old art style, that would have just had to be it just would have had to have been like that.
Yeah.
Whereas now we look at that and go, oh, that could do with an animation. And go, okay, we'll stick that on the list and get that. You know,
So crawlers are coming, but they were added, but they were removed quickly because they just kind of spoilt the look of the game and stuff.
All right. So tell us a bit about some of the future plans that you're working on at the moment, then.
well, then I guess the next
Well, the ones you can tell us about, anyway.
Yeah, well,
NPCs are going to be good.
NPCs are the big one. It's quite satisfying that people think that the game has been fun now, because really in our heads the NPCs are what the game's about, and it's like zombie fiction. It's not about the zombies as such. It's about the characters,
The old psychos that you get.
how the apocalypse changes people, and Darwinism.
Darwinism, that old guy. Yep.
Darwinism like creeps back in, and
It's how that group dynamic works, and how it's not just about like skills, it's about the personalities. You might have two very skilled, useful people who just don't get on, and then so that group becomes very difficult to manage. And
it could lead to bloodshed if they're getting, start them going to plotting against each other, and like, one person doesn't like another, they're going to try and off them when they go out looting and pretend they got killed by zombies. And do you know what I mean? We want to get all that. The emergent stories that have come out of that, all the different possibilities, is quite huge.
And then plus, of course, we want to get the Kate and Boltzmann story back in there, because there's a whole bunch of Will's writing which has been sat there waiting for the NPCs to go in, so that we can put all that stuff back in.
Yeah, and
that's going to be a huge.
Yeah, and that's like what we consider like 75-80% of the game, and so like it's a big deal when that goes back in.
All right, so I think I've taken enough of your time. So just quickly before we finish this, do you want to just give yourselves a bit of a plug? Tell people how to get hold of the game and why they should.
Go on projectzomboid.com, or look it up on Dazura, or if you prefer, wait a while and we'll be on Steam early access at some point. It's cheaper now than it ever will be. We're £5, $8 at the moment, and that'll only go up. It'll be higher when we're on Steam, so not much higher, but so yeah.
So pick it up now. Support the devs. Come on, guys.
Support Dazura, because
Dazura's awesome. I get most of my games from there.
They're amazing to indies, and they deserve a lot of love from people. So yeah, they've helped us out a lot.
All right, great stuff. Thanks for the interview.